Welcome everyone to the Wednesday morning series. Troy Love is here. And Troy, we've got our first question. This is an addict, 3 years sober in recovery. Recently, I did some work alone in the wilderness based on wisdoms that I've gleaned from both of you and Bill Plotkin. Since that experience, my dreams are reflecting that something very different shifted through this experience. A burden that I carried a very long time seems to have been relieved. Shadows that I let influence me throughout my life are not so shadowy anymore. Can you speak to or give guidance on shadows that are changing?
Well, Dean, that is amazing. So thank you for sharing that. I'm really excited for you. I think that's the goal, right? We start to understand, and when we look at Carl Jung's work around the shadows, because that's where this all comes from, is wanting to integrate ourselves and become really aligned with who we are, and to become aligned with our light rather than the shadowy parts of ourselves. So when we look at it from the shadows, when I say the shadows of shame, I'm referring to those shame messages, right? And what you're saying is that I've developed some resilience. I've learned how to align my behavior with my core values and my light. And so the more that we practice that, the more that we connect with that. You think about an actual shadow. When you turn the light on, it can really dispel the shadow. So the fact that you are seeing that change is happening, and I know who you are, bud, and I've watched your shift, and I think it's freaking amazing. So that you that they're not as toxic, they're not as in your face, they're not as powerful because you've learned how to work with them. We talk about how the shadows really are there to try and protect us from pain and suffering, but when we learn how to actually get those needs met in a healthier way, the shadows don't need to do that as much. So I just think that's amazing. So congratulations, and I hope that work continues for you.
Yeah, and yeah, I was thinking too, like recovery is about transformation. And, I think it's all of those shifts that you're talking about, but we're able to identify things in a different way and see them for what they really are, because I was also thinking like a shadow is not real,
Right. Right.
so if we're able to go, that is a shadow. And like I always think it's interesting when I'm outside and like and the light is projecting something and the shadow looks
Yeah.
ginormous, and then you go, yeah, but like, it's a shadow of me. I know what size I am,
Right.
so it really puts, like it helps you have perspective on things. And that's what I'm hearing with this is you're getting some really great perspective on, on things. But yeah, like I see changes in people. I mean, even the way they can look at people, you can look people in their eyes. You show up differently in recovery, as you're doing this work. But I love that you're finding the benefits of it. You're feeling, like, not even just seeing, you're feeling, that transformation. So yeah, and you know what? You're 3 years in, it gets better. I promise, it gets better. Keep doing it. It gets even better. Like, you're going to keep going like, wow, I thought it was great at 3 years. And you're going to go, it's even better. So, I mean, it's not all, lollipops and gumdrops. I get it, but,
Dang
but
it. I wish that
yeah,
it was.
I know. I was like
But
hoping, but that's
that's
not
part of
reality.
life, right?
Yeah.
No.
Well, and honestly, that's what recovery is dealing with life on life's terms. We
Mhm.
did not have the coping skills to do it. So we came up with all these, you know, interesting ways to do things that, served us in the moment, but, also
Right.
hurt us. So
Yeah.
other question. I did put the in the chat, I put the link to the work group that starts July 15th.
Yeah,
So
it's
if
coming
you're
up.
a man, I know if you're a man who would like to get some help on attachment wounds, that would be a very great opportunity to, work specifically on those. So we have a number of work groups, and I see another question, but I'm going to put a plug in. We've got Sex Addiction 101 or Porn Addiction 101, which are solid foundational places. Start with those. And once you have a foundation, then, attachment wounds, inner child, healthy intimacy, why men struggle to love. And for partners, we have the betrayed partner group starting again in July. We also have the boundaries work groups. We've got two different ones that are, like understanding what your internal boundaries, can and should be, and holding those so that you are not betraying yourself is really important. So, okay. Is the same book as Finding Peace. Never mind. I'm a good girl.
So I know what she's
Finding Peace
asking.
is still a great workbook
I know
for
what she's
you.
asking. So,
Yeah.
and maybe Tammy and Scott will twist my arm and we'll do one for betrayed partners one day in my spare
I,
time.
I think it
So,
would be great. So, but yeah.
the work the class that she just put the link in, this is the workbook that goes with it. So
Hmm.
it's it has some of the same activities as the Finding Peace workbook without the storyline. But so and you can get that on Amazon, but it has no, it doesn't have a whole lot of instruction. It's just mostly workbook. But
Yeah. And well,
it,
and one of the things about a work group that is different, because lots of people go, oh, I'll just, you know, I'll save money. I'll just do it myself. You miss out on the rich experience of connecting with others. And part of that is somebody will say something and you'll go, oh, I never thought of that. And, or, we're talking about shame stuff like, oh my goodness, having the ability to go, oh, this, me too. That's a very different thing than just reading something and doing a workbook. So, and yes, you know, I I would welcome Troy doing a work group for betrayed partners. I would even help you with that. Like
would you?
yeah,
Okay.
I would be interested in like
Oh,
collaborating with you on that.
let's do
So,
that then.
okay, there you
I'll just
go.
put
That'd
that
be
on my agenda.
no, let me, no, I actually, I love this work. I've done it personally. I went to one of his live retreats and like some of the stuff I already knew.
Mhm.
But I got some of the stuff I didn't really want to own and I had to. So,
I hate
and
that.
I know, but like honestly, like just to go, yep, I mean, it's the reality. So like just pretending it doesn't exist or that it's minimal is not really helpful. So that's on for, and that is obviously open to women. So consider one of his in-person retreats as well. So,
Yeah,
but
we have one coming up in September in Texas. So, and
okay.
that's it's just a general one. It's not for men or women particularly. It's for anybody who has attachment wounds. So,
Which is like 99% of the planet. So,
right. I know when we talk like I talk to marketers and they're like, so who is your target marketing? I'm like, well,
humans.
humans. I know that doesn't narrow it down very much, but
Yeah,
that's who it is.
it is. Like I said, even people who have done I've done a lot of work on myself. And this was a couple of years ago that I did this retreat. And guess what? I was like, oh, I learned more. So, oh, every time a feeling or a sensation insight comes up, I cry or shake or anything. Does that mean something has released from the body? Do you guys know?
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been trained to do is breath work. And when we look at the Finding Peace model, and I'll just bring that up really quick. Um, all of the stuff that's the black and the blue and the orange and the yellow and the purple, that's all stuff that we do like in counseling sessions and all that stuff. But at the core of it, what we're really looking at is just how our body deals with pain, right? So we're looking at trauma. And if you've read Bessel van der Kolk's book, The Body Keeps the Score, and there's others similar to that. We learn that when trauma happens, we unlike the other mammals in the animal kingdom don't know how to release that very well. So we end up storing it in our body. And so when we do things like breath work or turning into our emotions and just we do Peter Levine's work with what's the word for that? But physical, we're doing physical things with,
Somatic.
yes, thank you. Sometimes my brain. Somatic work, any of that stuff. The idea is we're trying not even to go into the cognitive, like we're really just trying to stay just with what's happening in our body and trying to listen to what our body is telling us. So when we do breath work or those other things, we we help our body unlock that. And so oftentimes what will come out is tears, sometimes laughter. I had a breathwork session that I couldn't stop laughing. It was and it actually really unlocked some stuff. I tell this story because I wasn't comfortable dancing. I felt really uncomfortable dancing and really awkward. And so I would just kind of be one of those wallflowers. Everybody else in the room's dancing, and I'm like, crazy. Um, but then after that session, I don't know what happened, but I felt free to just move and do all of that stuff. So it is highly likely that when that's happening, some things are being released, and you can enhance that. So you can really get into your body and you can move and just kind of go with what your body is feeling. So if you want to twist or just kind of move or jump or shake, any of that stuff, that can also help. So I think that's beautiful that you're experiencing that.
Yeah, and I know like EMDR came out of walking because it's that bilateral. So movement, really does help us process. I am far more creative, when I'm out, for a run or a walk or something like that. Like things come to me and with more clarity. So I think any of those things that can help you move through. Somebody was, and I forgot who it was. It was on one of the webinars, but somebody talked about, with the animals in the wild kingdom, they shake. Maybe it
Hmm.
was you, but they
Hmm.
shake stuff off, and then like they could have a terrifying experience, and then they shake, and then they're fine. And I was like, oh
Yeah.
man, there's something to that we could take, because yeah, if we're pulling it all in and shoving it up in the closet and not addressing it, guess what? Some of us become addicts, and some of us have medical issues,
Yeah.
autoimmune diseases, etc. So yeah, the attending to things really does make a difference.
Even trauma yoga is another.
I've not, well, I don't do yoga because like that's not, but trauma yoga, I've heard of that, and I was like, oh my gosh, I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, so if you, there's probably a trauma yoga person in your area, or if not, they do some online. But these are yoga instructors who have been trained in trauma and body work, and it's a really fascinating and another way of doing body work. Which what I love about that kind of stuff with Peter Levine's work or breath work or is that you don't have to think about it. You can think about it after the experience. So you do the trauma or you do the breath work or your body is moving, but you're just letting your body do it. And then afterwards, you can go and talk to your therapist or you can talk to somebody and say, oh, this is what changed and shifted. And you can make sense of the experience. But that's the beautiful thing is, you know, you just go with it.
I did awaken breath work, and
Hmm.
and yeah, it was one of those really amazing experience. It was a day long retreat on doing that, and it was it released a lot of stuff and creativity. It was crazy that just breathing in a different way like that, can do something like that. So What has been your honest experience with working with men whose motivations are not to mature and heal, but to conform and placate? It has been very alluring to just learn the language to become a good person for the sake of relationships and not dig deep into personal value system. How do men get to a point of doing it for themselves, their own value system? That's a great question. Thanks for asking that. Because yeah, in 12 step we talk about, walk the walk, not just talk the talk, and this feels like a talk the talk. So
Mm. Well, to so you said an honest experience. So a lot of the guys that I work with, they come because their wives made them, which is great. That's
mhm.
that's that's a
You got to
start,
get
right?
there.
You
Yeah.
got so I do have some who come on their own, and that's amazing. But a lot of times they come because their wife made them, and they're just trying to be compliant, and they're trying to do, check the boxes and show that they're going to therapy or whatever. Um, and that is a place to start. It's not sustainable. If a person is wanting to do, if a person is doing whatever work, um, for somebody else, it's not going to be sustainable. So if I'm trying to lose weight for you, if I'm trying to uh, overcome my addiction for you, if I'm going to school to become a doctor for you, like, thinking about parents who expect their children to become lawyers or doctors or something. If I'm doing that for you, that's not going to be sustainable. And that is, the person is going to not follow through. So what we're hoping, and my experience has been that the men who come in and they're at least open, they're at least open to exploring, and they start to feel some things as they do the work, they start to shift, and they start to realize, no, I like how I've been feeling when I'm sober. I like how I'm feeling when I'm making some changes, and I want to keep that up. And so it can flip into, I want to do this for me. The other thing that I notice, or what some of the times that I've had clients whose partner has decided to leave the relationship, and I'll ask them, okay, so your wife left, um, you know, what's the motivation now to continue the work? And they're like, because I want to do it for me. Now, if I had asked them that when they started, they probably would have said, oh, my wife's gone, I don't care, I'll just do whatever. But they've shifted. So is that every guy? No. But that has been my experience with a lot of the guys who do that. So they do get to that. They do it for themselves when they start to realize, no, I got to do this for me. And that's when the rubber hits the road, and I see real change happening, because they're not doing it for anybody else but for themselves.
Yeah, and my experience is that people that are just talking the talk, they don't stick around. Something happens, but it hasn't, become a foundation for them. So that isn't sustainable. So, and sometimes it takes another crisis for them to, go, oh wait, I really, really do need to do this, and not just, give lip service to it. So, but we talk about recovery takes 2 to 5 years. I don't know where this person is in the process, but at some point, yes, we want to have this integrated into all areas of our life. We if we continue to do that compartmentalized life, it doesn't work, and we don't get the benefits of recovery. We're still kind of straddling the fence. So I'm going to read the next question. I'm going to be able to hear you, but my computer just let me know that it's going to run out of juice. So I'm going to go get a power cord,
Oh,
but I'll be able to hear.
okay.
But Troy, the next question is, Troy, are you personally speaking, teaching at the retreat, or are your colleagues delivering the content? So talk about the one in Texas in
Yeah.
September.
So yes, I will be there. So the Finding Peace retreat is not your normal type of retreat. We call it an experiential retreat. So we don't have particular people lecturing and doing stuff. How the retreat works is we end up telling a story. We tell a story, and then as the characters in the story are doing things, it's similar to how the Finding Peace workbook works. We tell a story, and then we'll get to a thing where the group does an exercise, or an individual does an exercise, or you get into small groups and you do an exercise. And so and then we process all that, and then we do another one, and we do that. But I will be there, and helping guide all that. And then we do have others who will also be there to help as well.
It is a team effort, and when I did mine, we learned from each other as well as Troy and the facilitator. So trust the process. It's worth it. Okay. Betrayed partner here in 23 years of this hell. I'm dealing with several weekends of major D days. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. All right, I'm last weekend I fell into pieces and beyond broken, totally dysregulated. Another major D day is coming up for me this coming weekend. Do you have any tips for me on how to regulate?
So I don't know if you mean like an anniversary of a D-Day, or if you're maybe doing a full disclosure kind of a thing. It isn't. It is very common for like anniversaries, the day of the day you found out, that becomes a really overwhelming day in the future.
Anniversary of D days, as they added. So yeah.
Yeah. Um, so so part of that is you knowing, obviously, that you're knowing that that's coming up. So when we look at trauma, what is the story that we're telling about that, right? So obviously, D-days are catastrophic because everything that you thought about your life is not the same, right? And so it's really, that's part of the dysphoria of trying to make sense of this, is like, I thought my life was this way, and now I found out that it was like this. And so there's a lot of story to make sense of that. So part of that is looking at, well, what is the story that I'm telling myself today? And we want to look at those three stories in particular, the three core beliefs. Can I see anything? I gotta put my glasses on so I can make sure I get the right one. Um, so the three stories are, um, I am not enough. There's something wrong with me. Uh, I should have known, all of that kind of stuff. The second is safety or trust. So I'm not safe. I can't trust my partner. My world is shattered, and there's nothing I can do about it. So what I'm guessing happens, and it's not unusual, is that all three of those core beliefs pop up as we get closer and closer to these anniversaries. And so first, we want to check in. So am I enough? Can I connect with my truth that I know that I am enough? What kind of things have I learned how to do to put some safety into my life? How have I learned how to have boundaries around this? Are there people that I've learned how to reach out to so that I can have some support? Which then leads to the third one, which what are some things that I can do to really know that I'm not powerless? I have choices. So that's one of the things. Just check in with what those core beliefs are, and if they're all negative, can you look at changing them a little bit, doing some things that help regulate, like breathing. Huge thing is breathing, making sure that you're breathing from your diaphragm and doing regulation with that. um, if you know how to meditate, and you just practice meditating, and you practice that every day for 5 to 20 minutes, preferably 20. I know that's hard. It actually gets easier. You learn how to regulate over time. So that's another one. Going and doing something to take care of yourself that day, so that you can kind of shift the experience, reaching out to friends, um, doing journaling, those kind of things. There's lots of different things that you can do. Um, if you even just Google like body regulation techniques, there's probably a million things out there that people can do. I just want you to know that your pain is valid and you're not alone. And if you are a betrayed partner, so hopefully you have been able to connect with some of the betrayed partner drop-in groups that we have, or We Tonglen, which is a website just for betrayed partners, which is another resource, so that you can have people hold space for you, especially on those really challenging days.
And often it's the day before and the day after too, so give yourself some grace, with those time frames too. So I threw in the chat, there's the Empowered Women's Retreat is coming up in August. That is amazing and healing for the partners. They do breath work, they do anger release, they do a lot of techniques that are really helpful at moving things through. I put in the chat also the previously recorded webinars. Debbie McCrae's are exceptionally helpful for partners. On the webinar that was posted from last Friday, she talked about self-care things, and there's a whole bunch of things, including, the various breathing techniques, but like having your self-care, emergency kit, she kind of calls it too. I have for myself found that if I am grateful, if I can write a few things I am grateful for, I cannot, and like if there's research, you cannot be completely dysregulated and grateful, and there's always something to be grateful for, like there's always something, that is really been helpful for me. The other thing is being really present. One of the things I do for myself in grounding is I take my shoes off and I put my feet on the floor. I feel the carpet or the floor or whatever. And I know
Grass.
that in the moment I am here and now. And then I think about in this moment, am I okay? Am I safe? Am I whatever? And in that moment, yes. And that really for me can help me in that moment, be okay. Because if we're constantly focusing on, the past, as Dr. Gabor Mate, said, and Dr. Eddie Caparucci quoted, we can't make that unhappen. But what we can do now and how we move forward, we can have some choices. And I'm not minimizing anything that you're going through, just throwing out some things that may be useful for you, so that you don't, have to, keep replaying and reliving, those moments. But, I find it really empowering if I go, yep, that happened. And, here's what I'm going to choose to do, for today in this moment, whatever. And then tomorrow, this is what I'm going to do, whatever, but those, that starts to shift things, from being stuck in this happened to me to, and now I'm going to do this for me. Okay. I feel sad for my betrayer that he comes from a family system that operates on a very superficial level. No wonder he turned to his addiction. Will he ever be able to grow up and start engaging on a deep human level if he stays connected to his family? No real connections, just a fake family text, using each other as props for Christmas, etc. Yet it fills the void for him, and I feel that holds him back from finding people to make real and deep, meaningful connections.
Well, does he have the capacity to grow up? Yes. Um, so I don't know his family dynamics or any of that stuff. One of the things that I say a million times is the way that we heal attachment wounds is through connection. Part of the challenge for that, especially, not just especially, I mean, betrayed partners feel shame just as much as the addict does, but shame really drives disconnection, And so part of what might be happening, as you're kind of hinting to it, is that as unsupportive and shallow those relationships are with his family, they are like comfortable, right? So I don't have to be vulnerable. And I would imagine that if he was vulnerable in his family, that they wouldn't know what to do with that either. And so they all like to keep things shallow, just for comfort's sake. And so part of that is helping the the person learn that if we meaningful connection is really important. We can start with your spouse. Let's try that one. Let's also see if you can find some guys like in a 12-step meeting, or if you can find some guys in a drop-in group, or if he can go to like group therapy or something like that, so he can start to build some connections. It's really scary. One of the concepts that I teach a lot is the list of 12, which is having you come up with 12 people that you can reach out to and that can be emotionally supportive to you. And 9 times out of 10, when I say that, especially to the men, they're like, 12? I don't even have one. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty normal. So let's start with putting one. Like, who's one person that you can begin to develop a relationship with? Part of what we have to teach them is that relationships require energy. They require vulnerability. They require commitment. They require me to share some of myself and hold space for you. And so a lot of times it's that they don't know how to do that. Especially if you grew up in a family that was really shallow. No, they don't know how to do that. So we have to teach them. This is what it looks like, and this is how we do it. Um, so if he wants to, that's the key thing, is he wants to, then yes, he can do it. Um, I don't know how old he is. I don't need to know how old he is, but as the older we get, we start to understand like, hey, this relationship is not really serving me as much as maybe some other relationships are. And not that I want to just throw these relationships out, but maybe I want to work on building some relationships that are more meaningful. So it sounds like you probably have had conversations with him about that. And he's probably dealing with fear and shame, and that's normal, but he can work through that.
Yeah, and I was really impressed with the that you're able to recognize, like you feel sad for him, like you have,
Yeah.
some feelings of like, wow, that's got to be hard for him. But I'm with Troy. It's like, as if he's really doing the recovery work, you make real and meaningful connections with other people. You get a sponsor. You're doing things that will connect you in a different way, and then it really starts to show the glaring difference between these superficial relationships and something that is meaningful and connected. You being supportive, great, but it's why our residential treatment program is so powerful, because these guys that don't know how to do relationships are connecting with each other in a meaningful way and going, oh, this is what it feels like. This is how we can show up for each other. And you get to practice on people that it's like not your primary relationships, it's not family. And then you can start, taking that out, into, other relationships that are more vulnerable and meaningful. So, but yeah, and family is always tough, like, we deal with lots of people who are enmeshed with their families and things like that. So there's a lot of complexities, but in recovery, we can learn to put people in the proper, I call them the circles. It's like you have them in the proper area. So like, these are my really important people. These are the people that I trust. This is the person that, like, they'll show up for me no matter what. And then there's the family that I have obligatory, relationships with, but like, yeah, I need to hold them, out a bit. But it takes time. Like, but I'm grateful that you're here and asking, and I hope you're taking care of you, in all of this. That's really key. So, Okay, next question. When I want to share with my partner about me or my childhood or anything for that matter, he makes it all about him. Starts interrupting or asks clarification instead of making me feel heard or seen or validated. He is not a bad man. He does everything for me, but it's kind of frustrating to speak to him. Even telling him this would he make about him? Not much self-reflection. How can I handle this? Never speak to him again? That's a lot.
I'm sorry, I should laugh, but that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So he is battling shame, uh, and he also doesn't have a whole lot of emotional intelligence built. So one of the things that we know is that when a person starts engaging in their addictive behavior, their maturity really stops. So, and when they start to get into recovery, their maturity starts up again, right? So, kind of, so he is lacking in some maturity, and he's lacking in some skills to learn. So empathy is a skill, just like learning how to play the piano or throw a football or any of those things. So it's a skill that we learn, and what unravels it is shame. So when I'm hearing somebody sharing what their hurt is, and especially if um, maybe it's even a hint of about me, I if I'm in that shame, I can't really hold space for you, because all I'm thinking that you're saying, it's not what you're saying, but all I think that you're saying is that I'm bad, or I'm a horrible person. um I can't, I'd have to go search for it, and I don't have time, but Brene Brown talks about the some people that haven't who don't she gives several different examples of people who don't hold shame. They're not very good listeners. You know, the one who one ups you. Oh, you think that's bad? Let me tell you about that. Or you know, they do that. So, but all of that is shame based. So, um, one of the things that you can ask him to do is to go learn from someone how to learn how to listen. Um, he will probably take that as shame and maybe not handle that well, but that's part of it. So you um you can share, hey, when I'm trying to talk about my childhood, and you change it and you end up talking about you, it really makes me want to shut down and pull away, and it makes me never want to talk to you again. And that's not the kind of relationship that I want to have. So can you hold space? I want to share something with you that's about me, and can you hold space for that and not make it about you? Because that would be that's what I need right now. It's I don't know what it is, but a lot of guys do struggle with that, and part of that is they don't know how they're feeling. When a lot of guys, when they start working in recovery and we ask them how they feel, they don't even know that. So we hand them the emotions wheel, and they start to figure that out. And so when they start to become more aware of what's coming up with them, they actually can hold space for you. So part of that is, it sounds like he has some work to do, but I'm hearing the frustration that you're not feeling heard, and you want to share yourself with him, and you want to be heard, and that's important, and that matters. So hopefully he can maybe go to a class or something like that where he can learn some of that.
Yes, and I don't know where this person is on the sobriety scale, like where they are in that process. But I put in the chat the healthy boundaries work groups for partners, because that part of it is internal boundaries. And like, yeah, and Debbie McCrae is fantastic at, like if something's happening, like if you did the gracious invitation that Troy was just talking about, are you able to hold a space? And he says yes. And then he proceeds to revert to the same patterns, which is, there's a pretty good chance of that. I love, she puts her hand up and that's a physical thing, and it's a reminder to me as well as showing the other person, and even telling the story I'm telling myself is that I asked you to hold space for me and you're unable to do so. So therefore I'm going to, and whatever the consequence is. But it's a 4-part talking boundary. She's really good at helping do that. And nothing escalates, and you don't have to go, oh, he can never hear me and I should never talk to him again. It's just like, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to betray myself in this whole process. This person has a lot of learning to do. And, that is an opportunity for you to hold your space and help them learn that that isn't going to keep, it's been working for him, because he can deflect and make it all about him. But, you're going like, nope, I'm going to hold my space for me. There's so many things to do. And it's also one of those where this is really common. Yeah, it's self-centered, self-serving, all of those things, and deflective and dismissive, all of those things that work in the moment for an addict that keep pushing people away and keeps vulnerability from being an opportunity. Betrayer here. For 5 months, I have tried to work the steps in my recovery in the hopes to save my relationship. I ended up being totally overwhelmed, and it culminated in a new D-Day from my partner 2 months ago of past history before we were together that I hid from her about myself. I realized that working the steps honestly while trying to appease her was impossible for me. Our couples therapist told me yesterday that an extended no contact period of 4 months would be beneficial, so I can work my steps and my recovery without any pressure of delivering or ETA, and do it only for myself while she also works on her recovery. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know your situation, so I can tell you that having a constructive separation can be helpful for couples. There needs to be guidelines of what that looks like, and how often you check in, and hopefully you're going to continue with your couples therapist during that time. Um, it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. If you were doing all of this to appease her, I'm hoping that you can shift that motivation and understand that you want to do this for you. Because at the end of the day, you're the one who has to live with you, right? So I'm sure that that's scary. The thought of constructive separation for 4 months with maybe no contact and all of that is scary and daunting, and there's worry that like we're never going to come back and all of that stuff. So that's scary, and I'm not saying you should or shouldn't because I don't know your situation. What I would hope is that when you say that it's totally overwhelming, um, that's the part that I would hope that you would explore. And hopefully maybe you have a therapist who can help you with that, and hopefully you have a sponsor who can help you with that, because that's the piece that you're struggling with, emotional regulation. And that's probably why you kept some things back in the beginning, because there's so much fear and the shame of if you find out or bad things are going to happen, which then just continues to dysregulate you even more. And so learning how to regulate those emotions, name them, talk about them, learning that you can reach out to other people who can hold space for you while you're doing that. Those are all some things that would be helpful for you. My hope is that you can learn to do that for you. And the positive side effect is that when you start doing it for you, it actually improves the relationship too.
So last week we had a special edition webinar with Lindsay Stanley and Dr. Stevie Hall on therapeutic separation. They have a workbook out for that, and they talk through that. They're coming back in August as well. So there will be a part 2 because there was a lot more to talk about. You do want to have a plan. Both of you have agreement on the plan. You will each have a workbook, and if you choose to use it's really good because this is, like there is not really a plan, and I asked something about a research for people. It's not even about addiction, that just separate, and it's really chaos. So having a workbook that will give each of you, the opportunity to identify things, and then having a plan would, then you have a plan, and you can proceed. I'm like Troy, I was thinking too of the being overwhelmed. So Dr. Rob always talks about, if what you're doing isn't enough, level up. So if you're seeing your therapist once a week, maybe you see your therapist twice a week. If you're going to 3 12-step meetings a week, maybe you need to, do 90 meetings in 90 days again. Whatever isn't, we have a residential treatment program. Honestly, if you want to get a solid foundation for healing, we can help. So getting more help for you so that you can get that solid foundation, and not make a choice to act, because at some point, yeah, we're choosing to act back out, to go act out, rather than choosing to go, I should call my sponsor. So when you've got some tools, you just need more help in order to be able to utilize them and think in the moment. And Dr. Rob often talks too, and we talk about it in 12 step too, thinking it through. So if I go act out, what will be the consequences? Because we don't do that in addiction. We just go do it. And so giving yourself more space and picking up the phone to call your sponsor or your therapist or whatever. We have guys that listen. I had so many guys that said, every time I think about relapsing, I listen to a podcast. Great. Sex, Love, and Addiction is available 24/7. You can listen to it on, iTunes and Spotify, whatever. You could, great choice, because then you're going like, okay, I'm choosing this instead of having to be in a situation like this. So yeah, get qualified input. Check out that webinar. I think they did a great job of explaining what it is and isn't, when it's recommended, and kind of what it will look like. But those workbooks, and you each need a separate workbook, I asked. But that can be a really good, place to figure out what you need. And the no contact, I mean, like, it could be a 4-month separation, but from what they were saying last week, it's like, how will you communicate, rather than have it be zero contact for 4 months, and then what? So having a plan, I think, would serve both of you well. This goes back to the other one. Superficial family. He is 65. How does he learn to build deep connections? And I fear that as long as he has his family, he won't be motivated to find real connections.
So I'm gonna disappear for a second so that
Yes.
you can see some stuff.
Bye.
Okay, so these are the levels of connection that we can have. And as I go, you'll see what I mean. So the most superficial level of connection is social media. So somebody posts something and you go and you like it, or you post something and somebody goes and they give it a heart, right? So that's a really superficial way of connection. It's not meaningful, but it is a connection. So if you want to have deeper connection, we got to go and try something more than that, because if we just did social media all day, we would actually be really lonely, which the research shows. So the next level is email. So we can send an email to somebody, and what's better than social media is that I have more space. I can write more, and I can share what's going on. I can include some pictures and all of that stuff. The drawback for email is it's just one-sided, and the other person may not read it. They may misinterpret something that I said because they can't hear my tone of voice and any of that stuff. But it is a form of connection, and I'm able to communicate with the person, and then they can communicate with me. But if that was the only kind of connection that I had, it would be not great. So I got to do something even more. So the next level of communication is texting, which is what you've said his family does. Um, that is a fairly superficial level of communication. It's better than email because it's immediate. So the person texts and then I get a text, and I can text back, and so we can have some conversation that goes back and forth. It's harder to have long conversations when we're doing text because nobody wants to read 5,000 paragraphs of your text message. But the benefit is that it's more immediate and we can go back and forth. The challenge is that I can't see your face, I can't hear your tone of voice, and I might misinterpret what your meaning or your intention. So if I want to have real connection, I might need to go deeper. And so the next level is the phone. And so we pick up the phone and we have conversations. Phones are better than texting because you can hear my voice and we have immediate feedback. I don't have to wait for you to text me back. We can talk to each other, and you can hear my voice and I can hear your voice, and that's a lot better. It's a much deeper ability to communicate, and we can spend some time with that. And that's great. But I really would like to maybe see you sometime. So the next level of communication is something like in video messaging. So there's different apps out there where you can record a video of yourself talking, and then the person gets that video and then they can respond with another video. So it's a little better than the phone because I can actually see your face and I can hear your tone of voice and I can hear your inflection. And so that's better. The drawback is it's not immediate and it's not in person, but it is, I'm able to respond when I'm able to do that. The next is doing something like what we're doing right now with Zoom or FaceTime, where it's live. So I can see you, you're on the camera, we're interacting with each other, we're talking to each other, and that's a much more effective level of communication because it's live and I can see you and we can feel each other and we can engage with each other. But there's still something missing when we do that. And so the next level is in person and sharing with each other face to face, looking at each other in the eye. And then the last is through touch. I'm actually touching. So when we look at any of those, I could do any or all of those on a shallow level. And I can also do maybe when we get to video messaging and FaceTime and stuff, I can do that in a more vulnerable level. Um, and and when I do, that will help me be able to connect with somebody. Your question is if he's not motivated to go find real connection. And what I tell people when I share this with people, I'm like, okay, so what is your go-to and how lonely are you? If you're just using texting all the time, how connected do you feel? How heard do you feel? How valued, validated do you feel? And so what would it take for you maybe to try the next level? We talk to guys all the time in the meetings about pick up the phone and have a conversation with somebody. We want you to actually dialogue with each other about that. Use now that COVID happened and we learned that we can do all kinds of things with Zoom and stuff. We've learned that there's lots of ways. So it really goes to, is he wanting to have deeper connection or does he want to have shallow connections for the rest of his life? And I hope that he maybe decides, no, I'm 65. I don't know how many more years I have on this planet. So maybe I could build some deeper connections with the people that mean something to me before the next phase of my existence.
Yeah, we've had guys over 80 come to our residential treatment program because they wanted things to change and they were able to make it change. So he's not too old. Yeah, that's my point with that is he's not too old to change. It's just, what's the willingness? And yes, recovery takes work, it takes effort, but the dividends are amazing if we're willing to do it. So, okay. Betrayed partner here. My husband lied to his counselor, accepted his 2-year chip from SA Group and me, all the while he relapsed for 18 months and accelerated his behavior. He had all the recovery talk and behaviors. He claims he is working hard now. Is true recovery possible for someone that can lie to everyone? I got 2 things to tell you. The record so far that I've heard is someone who came to our residential program that lied to their therapist for 11 years. Then we have someone different that went to their meetings and had a 4-year chip and was also going to Recovering Couples Anonymous. So And yes, both of them changed and got help. So the lying, and Scott, my colleague Scott and I did a webinar on this exact topic. And Matt Wheeler, who's our friend, has also talked about lying, on webinars. So yes, we can learn to stop the lying. But you know what? It starts with lying to ourselves first. It's denial. And if we're lying to ourselves, it's like, well, as long as my wife doesn't know and my therapist isn't holding me accountable, and I'm not blaming the therapist, but if they're going to the therapist and wanting accountability, then things start to shift. Same thing with sponsors and everything else. So lots of people, and those of us in recovery can actually, you can start hearing who's just talking the talk and who's walking the walk. You see a shift. So I hope he really is. And for you, betrayed partner, I hope you've got healthy boundaries in place for you. Again, I put the work groups for healthy boundaries, in the chat. I would strongly encourage you to do that. It's not about his words, it's about his actions and how he's showing up. And I think you'll start to feel the difference as well. So, Troy, thoughts?
I believe that people can change. We wouldn't do this. I wouldn't do my job if I didn't believe that change is possible. And sometimes they have to really hit some dark spaces before they realize, hey, me lying is hurting everybody, and I don't want to do that. So, is it possible? Yes. And can he do it? Well, let's see what he does. I'm sad that that happened for you, though. Um, that that's disappointing.
And my point is, you're not alone. I mean, and I hate that, and somebody asked about Scott's webinar, but Scott has shared it on webinars before where, he was lying. He was sitting in his 12-step meeting and telling a lie. And then he learned to go, wait, whatever I just said, 10 minutes ago, that was a lie. This is the safest place to tell the truth. And we still lie, the insanity of addiction is and then we learn to tell the truth. We learn to tell on ourselves. That's, I say that all the time. I have to tell on myself, like whatever I'm doing, I have to tell on myself. Yeah, check out, and then Matt Wheeler, I think he just talked about lying again, um, not last Friday, but the Friday before. But we've talked about it a couple times on that one too. Okay, so I see so much healing and around attachment wounds when somebody gives me a look or gesture or what. I would feel wounded and bad. Sometimes it does, but mostly I don't care anymore and it feels great. Why did the women's group stop on Thursdays, by the way? Because Troy had lots on his plate. We kept asking him for more stuff to do. So
Well, I'm glad that your wounds are healing. That makes me happy.
yes,
It was mostly a work-life balance and trying to uh, manage my own life. It made me sad when I decided to stop doing that. Um, and there were increasingly more support groups for the betrayed partners that were becoming available. Um, I still think about figuring out what to do with that and maybe trying something new because I miss the ladies. It was really fun. So I'm sad that we're not doing that, and I'm glad that you miss it because that means that it was impactful. So let me think about that. Lots of things are changing in my life right now, so we'll see what we can do.
yes, yes. And on that note, we are at time. So thanks everyone for joining today. And check out, again, we've got a number of special edition webinars that are coming up and that have recently been posted to our previously recorded webinars. And if I can be of help, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.